In celebration, it's April, it's National Poetry Month, and the library is honored and delighted to welcome poet Anne Chadwell Humphries. As an adult, Humphries gradually lost her sight from a genetic disorder, and yet she has used poetry to respond to this transition and to develop other senses, so that now she considers blindness a gift. The winner of poetry contests, awards, and scholarships, Humphries has published work everywhere from literary journals to city buses. Muddy Ford Press selected her poetry collection, An Eclipse and a Butcher, for its Laureate series, and she was designated a notable woman by the University of South Carolina's Special Collections Library. She has twice been named a finalist for the Carrie McCrae Nickens Fellowship in Poetry from the South Carolina Academy of Authors and the South Carolina Writers Association in 2021 and in 2022, so she's got a nice streak running there. Anne reads and writes using assisted technology. She will be pleased to sign copies of her book, as I mentioned, which is for sale immediately following our program. Please join me in welcoming Anne Chadwell Humphries for her engaging presentation, A Poet and the Gift of Blindness.
What a good job I did. Where's my phone? There. Hi, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning. An eclipse and a butcher. Howard Bryce had a soft spot for our mother. He'd plug wedges in watermelon for our family to taste. He'd draw no good, no sale. Bryce's Mercantile was one of only two grocers in the tiny county seat, population 397 in that remote Texas hill country. Saturdays, my mother piled the four of us into a 58 station wagon, no seat belts, no air conditioning, to drive 13 miles past sheep and goats, summer camps, and tourist cabins to the tiny market on the courthouse square. When we pulled in, we kids tumbled out and raced through the screen door. Not yet 10, I had been entrusted to order our usual 3 pounds of hamburger. As I approached the lighted case, Mr. Bryce sang out, "And how is Miss Anne today?" We talked about the great white Pyrenees puppy he had given our family. I watched as raw red meat coiled from his grinder. I watched as he swept the quivering pink pile on a silver scale to weigh, then watched as he wrapped it in white butcher paper and flourished the price with a black wax pen. I thanked him as I had been taught and found our mother with our little brother in her overflowing buggy, and then joined my sisters at that candy counter. That was July 21st, 1963. At checkout, we asked Mr. Bryce for boxes to be our pinhole projectors. On our way out, San Antonio papers headlined the President and Mrs. Kennedy's pending trip to Dallas. But on that day, in a gravel lot of a small town grocer's, a family turned its back to the sky to watch the moon slide across the sun. That is the poem, the cover poem. Billy, may I hold? We'll pass one around. That is the lead poem in my book, An Eclipse and a Butcher, and I wrote it. Okay, I'll pass. And the book cover, Billy's got, this is my friend Billy Music drove. The dog, this is my family at the time of that poem, and out in that ranch country, and I'm the one, we have a really sophisticated dog leash, it's a rope, and this is, I think we're squinting here, but it's right at the time of that real solar eclipse, which was in Texas. And so there was this contest for the 20s in Columbia called syzygy. Isn't that a best word? Syzygy. And I wrote the poem in response to that contest. And this poem was selected, allowed me to be an emerging voice. I qualify as an emerging voice. And I qualify as an underrepresented poet, which is good. So there are 3 poems on eclipses that anchor this. It starts with Portrait in Bronze of the Eclipse, and it ends with an artist renders the 1918 eclipse. Because doing research is what is so fun, many things that are fun about poetry. Now, this is going to be an organic conversation, and I'm just imagining that we're on a deck overlooking the marsh, and we kind of got me to me, we'll imagine that. And so, since there are not that many people here, would you go around and say your name and one of your favorite things? We'll start over here.
I'm Delia, and Humphries is one of my favorite. And poetry.
I'm Liddy, and Ann has been a long-time friend, very favorite friend.
Thank you. I did not set that up. Next.
I'm Paula, and my favorite thing is being an identical twin.
Oh, wow. With twin granddaughters, but not identical. Billy, you have an identical mother, don't you?
My mother was an identical twin. I'm Billy Mindy. I love traveling adventures with Ann. You should have seen our route down there.
Paula, thank you. Next.
I'm Judy, and my favorite thing are my children.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Judy. Next.
I'm Bonnie, and my favorite thing is my grandchildren.
Oh, All right, next.
I'm friends. I think my favorite thing right now is spring.
Friends?
Spring.
Spring, okay. All right, what was your first name?
Friends. F-R-E-N-S.
Okay, that's right. All right, get that correct. I'm careful with names. All right, next.
I'm Tom. My favorite thing is piano.
You know, I was thinking as a poet, Tom and tomato. You were saying bringing a tomato, and so your first name is Tom. So thanks, Tom. All right, next.
My name is Aaron, and my favorite things are my wife and my soon-to-be little girl.
Oh, congratulations. Yeah. Okay, who else?
My name is Cynthia, and my favorite thing is when my sisters come to visit, and they're here today.
Oh, that's nice.
Sophia.
And I'm Martha, Cynthia's sister, and my favorite thing is my family, and my sisters especially.
Okay. Martha.
My name is Jamie, and my favorite thing is Maine.
May.
Maine.
The state
Maine.
Maine.
Maine. Maine. Okay, it's that.
My name is Shirley, and my great-grandchildren are Joy.
Okay, all right.
My name is Sharon, and my favorite thing is books.
Books. Hey, Sharon.
My name is Bonnie. My favorite thing is the ocean.
Okay. Are there 2 Bonnies in here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. Double pleasure.
My name's Karen, and I love breathing in fresh air without pollen.
Yeah. True. All right.
I'm Rebecca. My favorite thing is words.
Okay.
I'm Amy, and one of my favorite things is possibility.
I'm Barbara, and one of my favorite things is this library and the wonderful staff here.
Nice.
Okay, Barbara. Yeah. Is that it?
I'm Dan, and I love this library and the folks who come here. It's one of my favorite things, who make it a library, not just building and books.
Billy, would you pull my thermos out? Thanks. So what I thought we'd do, again, each of these programs is, as I said, organic and customized. I mean, to see what the audience is, and thank you. I didn't expect this many people. Thank you so much for coming. Thanks. Claritin dries you out. Pollen. So, my idea is for us to leave with for you to leave with some insights about how I use my other senses. And I'd like for you to leave as if we were friends already, because I consider you friends I just happen to have met. So anyone who is a poet, who likes poetry, is already a friend, stamp in. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the disease and then how I write, and I'll fill some questions kind of at the end, all right? And Billy, will you watch when they raise hands, and if you would say your name as you say, I have a Bonnie, Barbara, Sophia, whatever like that. That's nice, if you can. So I used to see, and I really do think of the gift of blindness. And one reason is I feel like, you know how Native peoples are imbued with double identities? They're kind of imbued with take on another spirit. That's what has happened to me. So it's 30 years ago today, not today, this month, March, that I got my diagnosis. And it's a rogue gene. It's called retinitis pigmentosa. I love that word. Isn't it great that retinitis pigmentosa? It is gradual. Do any of you have friends who are blind or family members who are going blind? You can say yes, yes. No?
Yes.
Yes? One yes?
Yes.
Another yes?
Well, I'm Cynthia's sister, so I'm going to say 2 yeses in the same family.
Okay, yeah. Because macular degeneration is that, and diabetes are the two prominent causes, and glaucoma, of blindness in this state. So there is no cure for mine. They're doing genetic research. We might be able to get the CRISPR, where they take the vector and put the right gene in and they snip it out and it replaces it. But I'm not counting on that. I've come to terms with my blindness. So what happened is, I used to be able, you can hold your hands out if you see, you can see your fingers. Gradually, it just kind of came up. And this has been over, it's about 2012. So it took about 20 years. 2012 is when we figured out it kind of went all shape to where it was like, you know, the movies, and then now I can see light perception. And one of my poems in the book is about my husband taking me outside, and I love to see the moon. I can still see the light of the moon. Am I talking to you properly? Is that?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. The light of the moon, so he'll point like that. I think it's very romantic. And he'll wiggle his finger, and then I can get slivers of the moon, and something about that energy is very fortifying to me. Of course, we had counseling, coaching, and along the way, so there's been a grief process, but I've accepted it, and I turned it into a gift. It's turned me into a gift. Now, I'm going to pass over to show you a little bit about my life, and then we'll talk about the poetry. All right, I have a tactile map of the Holy Land. Do you? So when it talks about Mary and Joseph going up, 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 you can feel the cliffs, the Jordan River, the valley. So I'm going to pass that around because this is just really cool. And I have different friends read for me. I started to take Braille. I'm still taking Braille. I take Braille so that I can learn to read with our grandchildren. So they're learning their letter A. I know letter in Braille dot one. Does anybody know anybody who reads Braille? I find it's like a secret code, and I very much enjoy it, but it's a lot like the piano or a tennis swing. You have to practice it. And one of the things that has developed, the tutor does this for free. She's a retired visual teacher for the School of the Deaf and Blind. She's taught me to refine my touch of my fingers so that I'm more careful, and it really has helped. I mean, and Braille has helped with that. So my goal through the Talking Books Library. They had a winter challenge. I love challenges from libraries, Dan. I've done the summer challenge for several years at Richland County, and it's helped me make my poems, put them in a book, inventory my poems. You know, I can set goals, and I love a deadline. But this winter challenge is I wanted to read a Braille book for my grandchildren. So we were reading Little Burrow, and there's no rhyme in it. There's repetitive, Little Burrow, and I was so frustrated. I texted the tutor and said, we need to talk about this. And she said, I understand. What if I Braille 'Twas the Night Before Christmas for you? It's familiar, it rhymes, you can pick it up. So she Brailled this book she bought at Walmart. And she Brailled it on a clear plastic paper. And I have a Perkins Brailler, which Billy's niece is also that kind of a professional. Is Lexington County, is she? No.
Yes.
The Billy told me, and so I've become friends with Dawn, and we text each other encouragement and report. So that's something that I think kind of gives me some, quote, cred, is that I'm willing to learn Braille. I use 2 phones to compose. This is one of my keyboards. I'll pass it around to you. You know, a lot of touching in this one. I put bump dots. Every keyboard has a little bump dot, 2 at the beginning, and your number 5 on your phone has a little bump dot. But that's not enough for me, and when you're going fast. So you'll see I bump dot the numbers, every other number, and then I change the even numbers to the odd numbers, and the return, and the control, and the M dash, a hyphen and M dash, so I can move quickly. And I like to compose on 2 phones, because I can control the real estate here. Okay, that's a podcast I was listening to.
Messages. Don't touch open. Screen curtain lock. Screen curtain lock.
So I can control the speech, and
Mail. No unread emails.
this is on there.
iCloud. Button. Gmail. Button. Inbox. Selected. Messages. Unread. Palmetto LCU. Ready to make this unread. Eleanor's time. Recording. Service unread. Jane Hedden. Ethan Wellness Event. Eleanor's time.
See?
Recording. Service requesting.
And then I can navigate like you can by characters,
Kathy. L-E-A-N-O-R space.
which I really need because I can't see how people spell their names. And I started a poem for the Lady Gamecocks, and I didn't realize their names were spelled the way they were. So I needed to know that. And then, of course,
Words. Style. Record. Search. Apron. A1:20.
so Apple has made this voiceover, and it's in your settings. And it's one of their key goals to make this accessible to those of us who read with more than our eyes. There's an Apple accessibility 24/7 hotline, and they have senior advisors who have been trained on voiceover, and they're like partners. And I've been doing that for 12 years, one of the early voiceover users. And we kind of bounce ideas off of each other. I'll ask, what are some of your other clients saying is good? What are they having problems with? And I'll tell her what I'm having problems with, so we're a team. And several times I get the same advisor. The other day I called Sarah on the West Coast, and Sarah, I knew her voice right away. And I do try to learn voices. Now, it takes a little while to do that. Now, regarding poetry. So my vision, I could still see some vision when I retired. I early retired because of my vision. I just wasn't safe. And my shoulders were going up, and my children were telling me I was frowning all the time, and I was using a cane, and it was not the quality of life I wanted. I didn't use a cane at work. I just held onto a buggy and pushed it for that. I could go across campus. I did have an associate degree in nursing, 2-year degree as gold. And my sister has one too, and it's just been gold. After 9/11, my business, which I had, which I gave speeches around the country and training seminars. I used to write a column for Knight Ridder, and CNN picked it up, and I had a radio Manners Minute. It was on business etiquette. It was about leadership and character. So I had written before, but I'd never written poetry. And I'd written family memoirs to get all the stories down, which I did. I got as many down as I could. But I have had 2 guide dogs, blessed guide dogs. And my friend gave me, who's a guide dog puppy raiser, gave me this darling. Do you want to pass that around, Billy?
I'll get it from over here.
A stuffed animal, little blonde, with a harness. So my first dog was a Goldador. When they're puppies, they call them Goldadorables. So they're Goldens and Labs. And the second one was a full yellow lab. They're very handsome, very handsome. And the trainer asked, how am I doing on time? Am I at 20 yet?
Yes, you're 19.
I asked her, said, what kind of dog do you want? I mean, what color, what size, what would you like? And I said, well, I'd like a nice looking one. Well, they're all stunningly beautiful. Of course, they're bred to be guide dogs. But I used to take my guide dog, Grego, who just died, bless his heart, 1 month shy of his 14th birthday. And he lived with his puppy raiser. So I went to the Shepherd Center, which is a senior center, and was taking classes that were taught for a nominal fee by former professors and fabulous English teachers and historians, you know, really cool people. And one of them was a writing class. And so people were asking me to write a memoir, a little book about my adventures with Brego, which I had started. I've done the table of contents. I started first chapter, but I got lost. I got lost in the prose and in the pages. It just, So I chose poetry because I could control it. It had boundaries for me. It had line breaks, stanzas, syllables, rhythm, which the heartbeat I could hold on to. And I love composing in form, poetic forms. I think that has given me an advantage over maybe in some poetry contests, because some of the poems that are selected are a form of, as a poetry form. Because not everybody is willing to write a sestina. Not everyone is willing to write a villanelle. It's a lot of free verse and good, but even blank verse, that's kind of hard. And the one-line poetry is a thing, which is really cool. I've taken 4 graduate classes at the University of South Carolina in poetry. My first one was with Nikki Finney. I was one of 2 blind students on campus each time, and they were all poetry classes. And I was able to mingle with grad students, poetry, and undergrads, and the honors program that like poetry. And I'm going to remain friends with some of those classmates. So I was also eligible for a note taker. I learned these things to kind of go along and figure these things out, and things change. And so because I'm over the speed limit, age over the speed limit, I get free tuition. And there was a fabulous poetry class. So I invited Delia, it's my friend Delia Corrigan, to be my note taker. She got to go in the class for free, and she drove me. My husband drove her to her house, and I don't know how he got back, but
He
Delia
usually went out with his buddies. He we did our homework. Yeah.
But what did the professor tell you, given permission?
Oh, I was not allowed to talk at
She's
all.
not allowed to talk,
Terrible.
engage. But she and I, afterwards, she would help me with my homework and posting it to Blackboard, which is an ever-changing and the changing of the passwords. And I do have an assistant, Sarah, beloved Sarah, who told me she's worked with me for 8 years. So she worked part-time, 2 hours, 3 hours at a time. And she helped when we downsized, and she would say, Mrs. Humphries, this needs to go. And I thank you for telling me that. Cold things, but she helps me with my wardrobe. But she's also become a very good poetry editor. And so, in my opinion, I say, how does that sound to you? And we'll go back and forth, and then she'll shape the poem I'll kind of get it started, and she'll shape it, and we'll play with it. What stanza do we want? Sextets? Do we want quintets? Do we want tercets? Do we want one long poem? Do we want a sonnet? And then she'll look at it. She's got visuals, so she'll say, it looks good on the paper like this. Or she said, it looks too choppy, something like that. And we'll even out the lines. Again, I can put rhyme in the middle. As we know, anybody who writes poetry, I know everybody loves it, but Delia writes poetry, Libby writes poetry.
Paula.
There are 2, 3 that I know that write it.
Yeah, so you know you can put the rhyme any place. Now, I've asked Libby, I memorize poems, but I've asked Libby to read a couple of my poems that come from the book. That way I don't have to remember all the poems.
You want me to do that now?
Yes.
Okay.
Want to come up? Libby and her husband were at our wedding, and so we've known each other that long. And it's been grateful, but she has been a trailblazer for poetry in the state. She's a life member of the South Carolina Academy of Authors, and she's a beacon for the rest of us.
Oh, thank you, Ann.
That's true.
Well, Ann, I've known, as she mentioned, I've known her since her early 20s. And from the very first I've known about her and her endeavors, she has always had this attitude that I will get this done. And she's been absolutely remarkable in her response to her experience with actually losing your sight gradually. And she asked me to choose one of the poems, and the one I've chosen, it's just a jewel of a poem, and I marvel at how she's able to pull these details in the way she has. Catchlight. There are miracles in Columbia. Beneath the Gervais Street Bridge, a pearl moon tilts its pitcher to pour a Milky Way of stars, to sequin the Congaree, glisten the granite and riverbank, glint the eyes of God, God's urban creatures, bind with the catchlight of earthly dreams. Then strung as beads a constellation, commissioned for the heavens by the North Star, to lay on the pale throat of what might be. Those wonderful verbs, glint, glisten, bind.
That was kind of a semi-early poem because it was in response to competition, National Poetry Month in Columbia invited us to write about the river.
Oh, yeah. I think I wrote one of those. I don't know what happened with it. My blind obsession. Blindness has finally settled comfortably into my life. It hasn't always been so. We have drawn blood. I ignored it, chased it from my yard, but it would not leave. So blindness and I shook hands, became friends. Like the fine china for special occasions, poetry had a place at our family table. But blindness dragged poetry out of storage for everyday use. Made it accessible, aired it out. Coleridge wrote of the tyranny of the visual. Poetry and blindness hold me accountable. They dream I abandon habits no longer relevant, smirking at ideas I have long held. I'm better for it. Now I sense the signature of a stride, voices as distinct as thumbprints. I can smell something funny going on. My memory muscle is as toned as an athlete. Poetry has claimed me. I'm restless without writing. I want to swing from the R in word and paragraph, bounce on to the S in sentence and phrase. More than a want, I need to steep in good poetry. Neither blindness nor poetry can be neglected, nor tolerate clutter. They stalk my sleep. I need writing to mix up, upend, shake my assumptions. Like all good writing, poetry is portable, accessible to anyone. Poetry welcomes those who love or never have, who are loved or never have been, were lost, but now are found, were blind, but now they see. I don't know about you, but they see.
It really sounds good when she reads it. Thank you. Okay, where is it?
Is that poem in the book?
What are you needing?
That poem, the microphone, where is
Okay.
it?
You're good.
There we go. That poem is on the website. That poem is not in the book. But I wanted to provide, and there are probably 10 poems on my website that you're welcome to. One of the favorites is called Baptism. That's the 3 Dreams is a favorite. Say the Words, people like. Now, I want to tell you about the senses that I have developed. Since I no longer fight to see, I don't fight it anymore. So I can use that energy to develop. I consider a sense of memory, it's a sense of attention, a sense of careful listening. I have a heightened sense of motion. I pay attention to people's voices. Mostly, I rely on hearing and feeling. But there are those emotional things. I have a sense of striving. I have a sense of endurance. I have a sense of imagination. And I am complimented on the visual images that I put together. Let me think of some other sense of orientation. When I'm outside, where is the sun? In this room, where's my back? I'm sensitive to the way the wind blows because we're taught that. I really like that my memory is toned. Now, it might be a senior athlete now, but people compliment my memory, Julia, Billy. And it's a sense of interdependence that is so wonderful. Now, I'm going to ask Delia and Billy, because they would just volunteer this the other day. So when we walk, they're trained, they know what to do. It's sighted guides, so they know to hold their arm, and I walk, sit behind them, and they'll say, step up, step down. And on the way down here, Billy, I said, what are you seeing around here? And so she would describe the fields, and there are 4 men in a truck on the side of the road, and there's this little cluster of 3 mobile homes and 2 brick homes over there, and then that looks like a big field that hasn't been planted. So I will ask people to describe things to me, and I've learned not to ask too much. So Delia, Billy, comment on that experience.
We were talking last night at dinner how doing that makes us notice more. And so Anne's gift of blindness becomes our gift of further perception.
Yeah. Now, all she does is ask you one question, and all of a sudden you'll think, well, let me describe that green, or let me talk about that depth. And you really do. You learn so much more when she asks you to stop and look.
And we would laugh because we would falter on words. Like I was trying to describe, here we are at the table, and I said, this is a bench. And Billy had to say, it's really a booth. Yeah, I just couldn't think of words.
Vocabulary too. You have to think of words.
And that is a skill I think you will have developed. Billy helped me with my very first class with Nikki Finney. She did not attend the class, but she helped me, and that's what the USC Disabilities Office was fantastic. And I was ready for a fight. I've had to fight for what I'm due, and I've had to fight agencies and nonprofits. I was just, let's fight. But they were so welcoming. But, you know, I'm the first blind student most of my professors have had. And so Billy would come over and read. We're converting it to digital, but sometimes it was crooked on the page and it was blurry. So Billy came and helped, and she would proof my work too. So she'd come in the living room. In the summer, I would go and I would pretend I was at poetry camp. And in the living room, I would write poetry in the beautiful East Sun. And then I would have my lunch, and then I would go to the porch. And I would spend the afternoon reading poetry. So I pretended I was in camp. I also, what I found lately that works is to set a timer, because I'm often like, oh golly, I need to do that. I need to respond to that email. So I set a timer for an hour, hour and a half, whatever I want, sometimes 30 minutes, because you can slide in a lot of things in 30 minutes. Inch by inch, life's a cinch. Yard by yard, light is hard. So 15 minutes adds up, 5 minutes, you can make a note. But I'll set the timer, and that disciplines me to stay in place, sit, stay. And I found that's a new technique that I've appreciated. Now, what's our time? Wait.
We're at 10:40.
Okay, so I allowed time for questions. So, anybody over here, questions?
And I'd like to say this is Libby, I'd like to say one thing about your hearing. I'm in a group with Ann, and she will listen to me read one of my poems. And it's amazing what she can recall because she's heard it. And I think sometimes you hear things that others in the group, including myself, we just don't hear. But you hear it. You hear the good things, like there might be rhyme or within the poem that I hadn't picked up on. And you hear things I need to think about. And I consider that a gift for me that you can do that.
Thanks. And I often ask in this writing group, would you describe your poem to me? Is it how many stanzas, how long, how many lines? And this can just do that quickly. Then I can visualize it, and also if it's offset, you know, indented, if there's a lot of air in it, and they explain that to me, and so I can memorize. But it's attentive listening. And I will say, as a poet, some people just talk they say things repetitively, and I said, you said it once. Now let's, I think poetry has given me a better command of my spoken voice. I think reading does that, but I like the person I've become through poetry. I remember when it kind of hit me, this is how I want to spend the rest of my life. This is what I'm supposed to do. It is service. It is genuine. It is spiritual. Now, what other comments or questions might there be?
I have a question.
Yeah, is that Sophia?
Along with the other senses that you said have increased, has your intrinsic sense of, like you said, you know when someone's having fun, or maybe a sense of danger, or...
I meant to include that. I have a sense of safety that is developed. And one of my colleagues said, anytime the hair on the back of your neck goes up, you respect that. And an example is where we live is a patio home community, and I was halfway down the steps, and I heard these loose dogs running. And I turned right around and went back upstairs because my guide dogs each were attacked by other dogs. It was horrible. So I can't see, are they happy Labradors? You know, they just got out. We got out, we got out. They were galloping, and so there's that danger. Also, there's a new river walk in Columbia. I do hike. I don't need to hike certain things anymore, my friend and I, speaking of danger, my friend and I were exploring. There's a quarry. We live right next to Sesame State Park, and there's an old quarry, sand there, so we went down at the base of it, which is a little bit spooky because it was behind the Goodwill and Planet Fitness, and there was debris all over the place. So we were like, oh. We went ahead, and then we started up the hill, and it had been raining, and it was not solid footing. And as we said, this is not a place for grandmothers. We're just going to turn around and go back. So yes, I keep the door locked when my husband isn't home. Does that answer your question? I am, I like to know where I am as we go, and as I give directions when we're in Columbia, I can give people who are not familiar with it, I can give them directions. What other questions, comments? Because I know we're getting close to the end.
This is Bonnie,
Bonnie,
and I'm wondering if you have any plans to get another guide dog.
not at this time. They were came to me at the right time. Like I said, my quality of life, and I was using a cane and going, I had to have a cane. And I was tapping through the neighborhood where we had lived for 20 years, and one day, a roofing crew, trash truck, and the FedEx all converged at me, and the wind was blowing, and I kind of got turned around, and I couldn't figure which way was back. I can feel the camber of the street, you know, because it's sloped. I said, I'm not living like this anymore. So we went to, there happened to be a guide dog convention down in Charleston, so my husband and one of our sons went, and all of a sudden people were wrestling, oh, they're going to the room and to the checkout, and some people who have guide dogs can still see, some. But for me, first of all, they're gorgeous dogs, and they attract good attention, and it gave me a sense of pride. We were a good pair, weren't we, Billy? All right. I got my dog from Southeastern Guide Dogs. It's no cost to me. At the time, it was 28 days training, and I will say that this is another reason, Bonnie, why it's 28 days training. It's very intense. It's very emotional. The second dog, I loved my second dog, Monty. We trained great. I picked him for speed and athleticism. But after 6 months of having him, we came home in October, having him, he suddenly didn't want to go out the driveway. And so, we're worried. He would sit down. And so we got him all checked out with a vet. There's a local vet who gave free care to the guide dogs. We paid for the tea and flick and heart. You know what I'm talking about, tick and flea. We checked it, did sonograms and everything, and he was all right. He had a gait like some horses do. When the left side goes, then the right side goes, front and left, like that. And my trainer and my husband wondered if that might have tired him, but I was only going on 3.5 miles. I mean, he should have had the stamina. And I respected him. I loved him. But it is such an emotional investment. So he went back. The vet down there, it was very difficult. The school said, Ann, just send him back. I know, you're a wonderful handler. Just send him back. And I decided at this point, we moved, so I'm closer to where my friends are, and I can get rides and elbows and walk into the park, but not right now. Not right now. But it sure was wonderful. Other comments? I'm watching our time, Dan.
Oh, yeah, you're fine.
What other questions?
Amy.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what was one of the most important transitions that you made in your relationship with your husband, and maybe one that you're grateful for.
Okay, that reminds me. Okay. Another gift of blindness is I have access to things. First of all, I can use my cane and I can clear a crowd. I get to load first on the airplane. I actually sat in the Pat Conroy family seating area because it was accessible. And so I was sitting at a book festival and the family came around and I said, oh my gosh, I'm sitting in the family. He said, no, stay. It was in the front row so I could hear. And so that was kind of funny. We showed them this book. Up here, it's My Heart Is Not Blind. So my sister and my dad heard a presentation by a photographer who happens to be the husband of Naomi Shihab-Nye, the poet, the international poet. And he does these black and white museum tours. He'd done one on teen pregnant children having children, the fine line between mental health and mental illness. There are a few others, and they're museum shows. So he was doing one, he kind of waited on people with blindness. And this is the portrait that he took. So there are 43 of us in here who were profiled, and he interviewed us for the most of 2 days, and then he'd take pictures for it. I'm getting to your husband question. But that was such a wonderful experience. And, you know, if you have met Naomi or know, her manner is just so engaging. But she responds to my email. I don't pester her with things. And they lived in San Antonio. That's where my husband. There's a poem in the book called Balance of Power. When we moved to our new place, my husband was taking on more things to do. I was letting him sign my name. I was letting him take out the trash. He said for me to stay out of the kitchen. Things that I could do. He said, I'll get that. And I had no job. You know, suddenly I was not the wife. And so we had a come to Jesus meeting and I took back signing my name, and we negotiated that I'll do what I can, I can take out the trash for Pete's sakes. I can put away this road tissue, you know. There are a lot of things I can do, but I save him. He's the driver. Although I'm a member of an organization that's national, you pay a membership and they provide transportation, 8 services. It's wonderful. They change the light bulbs, and it's volunteers. So we learned to save him for what only he can do. He checks my wardrobe. One day he said, either your skirt is too short or your slip is too long or something. I have a long slip under a short skirt. He'll tell me your hair is a little wild, or do your rouge. That's his job. And he'll narrate. He's good at narrating sports. Like in the basketball game, you know, the Lady Gamecocks, he'll tell me something about that. But he will say, I'll ask, what kind of shoes does she have? And he'll say, 2. And I said, what color are her eyes? His eyes. He said, 2. What color is that tree? Well, the trunks are brown and the leaves are green. You know, that's not. But he remembers Tiger Woods on the 16th hole and some putt. So there is a respect of husband and wife. That's a real insightful question.
Very lovely, thank you.
Well, I was going to say, sort of building on that possibility was Amy's, she offered that as her joy, or, you know, the thing she loved. And of course, there's a famous poet, Emily Dickinson, who wrote, I dwell in possibility, but I think you dwell in possibility, and you kind of bring others along with you, that even your husband has to, has to narrate, has to describe, and the folks with you are, instead of just saying a table or it becomes a booth, and they have to use their language, they have to dwell in possibility with you, they have to get more creative, and so it's heightened those other senses. But
Thank you for saying that.
I was going to, maybe this is related. You said I think I got this right, but poetry, it is service, it is genuine, it is spiritual. Could you say something more about that? Sometimes poetry can be seen as, navel gazing or kind of as vanity, it's a vain, something or not relevant. But what did you mean by that? It is service, it is genuine, it is spiritual.
Let me say that my poetry professors are some of the bravest people I've ever met. They will take on subjects, they will read their work out loud in front of people. Their poetry has meaning. So I love that. So they help me focus on what poetry does is distill what is really the heartbeat of this poem. What am I trying to say? And it's a skill you develop over, I'm still developing it. I'm trying new ways here, trying new ways. I tried to get in Nikki Finney's class this semester, but it was really for MFA, so she declined respectfully and sent me her syllabus. Poets get executed. Poets are the canary. Poets, and there's an action to get the poets out of Ukraine, and the scholars out of Ukraine. There's an active group trying to do that because their words are so dangerous. Part of the reason I write poems is I want to honor the people I'm writing about. I want to honor the situation. I want to honor, document an event. And I'm getting better as you grow. I'm getting some more coaching on really make the poem pop. It's just like that poem by Blind Obsession. It keeps me accountable. It just shuts off the clutter, the plaque, so to speak. Makes you really honest, and it helps me be honest. Another thing, Bonnie, is my husband's very proud of me. He's proud that I strive for this, but I did that with my business. When I had that business for 20 years with travel, I just did that. I'm comfortable in front of a group. And we've done it together, but he's very proud of me, I know, and he'll say, quit moving around. But as I said, I think reading and writing poetry, it comes out in your speech, it comes out in your thoughts. And it's a deeper world to me. It's so vivid, and it's stirring, and it's uncomfortable sometimes, or it's hilarious sometimes, but it's a different dimension of living life, in my opinion. It is a rich dimension. Well, I thank you. Please come up and say hello to me. Everybody passed around the whole, how about that map? Isn't that cool? And it was the night before Christmas, and I did memorize it initially, but I could read the words. I actually did that. I didn't read it fast, but I did read it, and that's a nice sense of accomplishment. Hopefully you feel we've become friends, and I'm hopeful, and I'd like to learn from you some senses, like what, was it Sophia back there who asked about the Dane safety? Was it you, Sophia?
Cynthia.
Cynthia, about sense of safety. That reminded me, so it's an interchange where you teach me and we discuss things. So thank you so much for coming.